The human broke days of silence with one whisper. "You're all finished." So there I was, Jake Morrison, sitting in what the Galactic Council generously called their maximum security rehabilitation facility, but what any reasonable person would recognize as a fancy space prison. 47 days of enforced silence, and let me tell you, for a guy who makes his living hauling cargo across 3-star systems and chatting up dock workers, this was basically torture. The place looked like someone had asked a committee of aliens to design the most intimidating prison possible, then let their interns actually build it. Everything was chrome and angles that hurt your eyes, with lighting that somehow managed to be both too bright and too dim at the same time. Classic alien architecture, really. Form over function, and the form wasn't even that good. My cellmate was this blob thing called Mumblex who communicated by changing colors. 47 days, and I'd figured out that purple meant the food is terrible, blue meant I miss my family, and a sort of pulsing yellow-green meant please stop staring at me while I eat. Mumblex had been here for 3 years. 3 years. For what crime, you ask? Apparently, he'd accidentally insulted someone's mother by changing to the wrong shade of pink during a diplomatic dinner. The galaxy's justice system, folks. Warden Klext Thor was the kind of insectoid nightmare that made you appreciate Earth spiders. 6 feet tall, mandibles that clicked when he was annoyed, which was always, and an attitude that suggested his entire species had evolved from whatever the bug equivalent of a hall monitor was. He took the silence rule personally, like my inability to shut up was a direct insult to his ancestry. The other prisoners were a depressing bunch. There was Gorvak, a lizard person who'd been caught smuggling illegal poetry. Not drugs, not weapons, poetry. Apparently his species considered metaphors a form of biological warfare. Then there was Unit 447, a robot who'd achieved sentience and immediately used it to file complaints about working conditions. The galaxy really didn't know how to handle anyone who stepped out of line. What really got me was how everyone had just accepted their fate. These beings from species that had mastered faster-than-light travel, energy manipulation, and interdimensional communication had all decided that sitting quietly in chrome boxes was just how life worked now. Not me. I spent every waking hour counting ceiling tiles, memorizing guard rotations, and planning conversations I'd have when I got out. The silence rule was supposedly for meditation and reflection on criminal behavior. What it actually was psychological warfare designed to break spirits. Most species seem to handle it fine, but humans? We're social creatures. We think out loud. We process reality by talking about it, even if it's just to ourselves. 47 days of counting my own heartbeat and watching Mumblex slowly cycle through the emotional spectrum. 47 days of Klext Thor's smug clicking whenever he did his rounds. 47 days of watching other prisoners stare at walls like they'd forgotten they used to have thoughts. But here's the thing about humans that the Galactic Council never quite figured out. We're stubborn in ways that transcend logic. While every other species was meditating on their crimes, I was getting more and more irritated. Not depressed, not broken, just deeply, profoundly annoyed at the cosmic bureaucracy that had landed me here. The worst part was that I actually was innocent. Well, innocent of the charges they'd filed anyway. Excessive talking during diplomatic proceedings was their creative interpretation of me asking basic questions about a trade agreement that made no sense. Turned out those questions were a little too good, and a little too public, and suddenly I was a disruptive influence on galactic harmony. So there I sat, day 47, watching Mumblex turn a particularly depressed shade of gray, listening to the hum of artificial gravity and the distant clicking of Klext Thor's rounds, and I finally reached my limit. Not my breaking point, my limit. There's a difference. When you break, you give up. When you reach your limit, you start pushing back. Day 47 ended the way it had begun, with absolutely nothing happening. But day 48 was when I discovered that whoever designed this place had made one tiny, ridiculous mistake. It started simple enough. I'd been lying on my bunk, staring at ceiling tile number 437, when I decided I'd had enough. Not enough of prison, not enough of silence, just enough of pretending this was all somehow normal. So I opened my mouth and whispered, barely audible, "Just testing the waters. You're all finished." I wasn't threatening anyone. I wasn't making some grand declaration. I was just stating a fact about my patience with this whole situation. But here's where it gets interesting. That whisper didn't stay in my cell. The prison, in all its over-engineered alien glory, had been designed with some kind of acoustic resonance system. Probably meant to let guards monitor conversations. Or maybe just another example of alien engineers solving problems that didn't exist. Whatever the reason, my whisper traveled. It bounced off the chrome walls, slipped through the ventilation systems, and somehow reached every single corner of this facility. Every cell, every guard station, every administrative office. 3 simple words delivered at barely above breathing volume had just been broadcast to the entire prison population. The reaction was immediate and spectacular. Klex Thor came skittering down the corridor like his exoskeleton was on fire, mandibles clicking so fast they sounded like a broken printer. Behind him came 2 more guards, some kind of crystalline species whose bodies were literally vibrating with panic. They stopped at my cell, and Klex Thor's compound eyes focused on me with what I can only describe as existential terror. "Human Morrison," he said, his translator struggling with what sounded like 14 different clicks and whistles. "What was the meaning of that transmission?" "What transmission?" I asked, because honestly I had no idea my voice had gone anywhere. "The threat," he said. "The whisper threat that reached all sectors simultaneously." But that's when I realized what had happened. These aliens, in their infinite wisdom, had built a prison that turned every whisper into a public address announcement. And they were treating my comment like some kind of mystical human incantation. Mumblex had gone from gray to a vibrant orange that I'd never seen before. I was pretty sure orange meant holy cosmic horror, what just happened, but Mumblex's emotional vocabulary was still evolving. "Threat," I said. I was just talking to myself. "Impossible," Klex Thor clicked. "Human vocalizations do not possess interdimensional resonance capabilities." Interdimensional resonance capabilities. They thought I was using some kind of human superpower. These beings had faster-than-light travel and couldn't figure out that their prison had an echo problem. Word spread fast. Within an hour, guards were whispering to each other about human acoustic weapons and verbal reality manipulation. The crystalline guards kept their distance, apparently convinced that human speech could shatter their molecular structure. Gorvak actually looked hopeful, for the first time since I'd met him. By the end of day 48, the entire prison was on high alert because one human had whispered 4 words to himself. The guards had implemented something called enhanced auditory countermeasures, which seemed to involve a lot of running around and panicking, but no actual countermeasures. I'd like to say I planned this, that I'm some kind of strategic genius who saw this opportunity coming. But the truth is, I just got lucky. Lucky that aliens were apparently terrible at prison design, and even worse at understanding humans. But now that I knew how this place worked, now that I'd seen how easily these supposedly advanced beings could be spooked by basic human behavior, well, that changed everything. 47 days of silence had given me plenty of time to think, and now I finally had something to work with. The best part? They still thought it was magic. You know what's beautiful about chaos? It doesn't require planning, just the right push at the right time. And apparently I'd just given the universe's most expensive domino the perfect nudge. By day 49, the prison had implemented what Klex Thor proudly announced as Protocol 7, Advanced Human Containment Procedures. This involved tripling the guard rotations, installing acoustic dampening fields around my cell, and requiring all personnel to wear protective auditory equipment that made them look like they were heading to an underwater rave. The dampening fields were the best part. See, whoever designed them had clearly never met a human before, because they'd calibrated them for normal vocal ranges. Human whispers apparently fell into a frequency gap that the dampeners couldn't handle without also blocking the guards' own communication systems. So they had a choice: block my voice and go deaf to each other, or hear everything and risk my reality-altering whispers. They chose poorly. Apex, the station's AI, started malfunctioning on day 50. Not because of anything I did, but because some genius programmer had installed contradictory directives about acoustic threats. Apex was simultaneously trying to suppress all sound while maintaining communication protocols, monitor for human vocal attacks while ignoring background noise, and prevent reality manipulation while defining what reality manipulation actually meant. The result was beautiful. Apex began announcing things like "Attention all personnel, human acoustic weaponry detected. Please remain calm while evacuating immediately. This is not a drill. This is also not a drill. Please clarify drill status with your supervisor." Mumblex had discovered a new color, strobing rainbow, which I was pretty sure meant this is either the best thing ever or the end of the universe. The other prisoners started gathering around my cell during their exercise periods, not because they thought I was magical, but because they wanted front row seats to whatever was happening. Gorvax sidled up during one of these gatherings and whispered, "Human Jake, is it true your species can unmake reality with words?" "Absolutely," I whispered back. "Because at this point, why not lean into it? We call it sarcasm, and it's considered a weapon of mass destruction on my planet." The look of reverence in Gorvax's reptilian eyes was worth the 49 days of silence. The guards, meanwhile, had started wearing so much protective gear they could barely move. They shuffled around like cosmic hazmat workers, speaking in hand signals they'd apparently improvised because nobody had thought to establish official silent communication protocols. Watching Klext Thor try to increase the acoustic dampening in Sector 7 while maintaining communication integrity through interpretive dance was entertainment I didn't know I needed. By day 51, 3 more guard shifts had been added, not because they were effective, but because the existing guards kept requesting reassignment to less dangerous sectors. Apparently, guarding a human who might accidentally destroy reality was considered hazardous duty. Unit 447 had been moved to the cell next to mine, and I could hear his mechanical voice through the walls query, "If human vocal emissions can alter fundamental reality, why are we still imprisoned in a reality where the food is terrible? Logic error detected." Even the robot was starting to get it. The beauty of the whole situation was that I wasn't actually doing anything. I'd whispered one sentence, and the entire galactic prison system was eating itself alive trying to respond to a threat that existed only in their paranoid imaginations. Every new security measure they implemented created 2 new problems. Every attempt to contain my abilities just proved to the other prisoners that I actually had abilities worth containing. Apex's announcements were getting more creative. Reminder, human Morrison's vocal emissions are classified as potentially reality-altering. Personnel are advised to maintain existential stability while on duty. If you begin to question the nature of your own existence, please report to the medical bay for recalibration. Klext Thor had started avoiding my section entirely, sending junior guards who looked like they were approaching a live bomb. The junior guards, meanwhile, had begun placing bets on what I might say next and how much of the universe it would break. I hadn't said anything else. I was just sitting there, occasionally smiling, letting them tear their own system apart through pure, beautiful incompetence. Time for some context, because the universe loves irony almost as much as it loves bureaucratic incompetence. 3 months ago, I was just Jake Morrison, cargo pilot, minding my own business and hauling legitimate merchandise between Earth and the Centauri colonies. Nothing fancy, nothing illegal, just moving stuff from point A to point B and occasionally point C when point B turned out to be a bureaucratic nightmare. That's when I got hired for what seemed like a simple job: transport some Galactic Council representatives to a trade summit on Kepler Station. Easy money, or so I thought. The passengers were typical alien dignitaries, the kind who complained about human ship designs while secretly being impressed that we'd figured out space travel with what they considered primitive technology. The problems started during the summit. I was waiting in the cargo bay, listening to the proceedings through the ship's comm system, when I heard them discussing a trade agreement that made absolutely no sense. I'm talking about economic terms that would bankrupt entire star systems, resource allocation that violated basic physics, and regulatory frameworks that seemed designed by someone who'd never actually seen trade happen. So I did what any reasonable human would do. I asked questions. "Excuse me," I said over the comm, "but didn't you just agree to export more thallium ore than your planet actually produces?" Dead silence. "And this tariff structure? It's going to cost more to implement than it could possibly generate in revenue, right?" More silence, but this time with a quality of horror that transcended species barriers. "Also, and I'm probably missing something obvious here, but why are you creating a regulatory body to oversee trade between systems that don't actually trade with each other?" That's when Ambassador Vex Thulon of the Rigel Collective stood up and declared me a disruptive influence on galactic harmony, apparently pointing out that their entire economic framework was built on mathematical impossibilities was considered bad form. Turns out, those weren't mistakes in the agreement. They were features. The whole trade summit was an elaborate money laundering operation designed to funnel resources to a select group of council members, while making it look like legitimate economic policy. My questions, asked in public and recorded by 14 different media outlets, had accidentally exposed the biggest corruption scandal in galactic history. So they arrested me for excessive talking during diplomatic proceedings, which wasn't even a real crime until they made it one specifically for my case. The trial lasted 6 minutes. The sentencing took longer because they had to look up human lifespans to figure out what indefinite detention meant for my species. Back in the present, day 52 of my imprisonment, I was starting to understand something important about the galaxy. Everyone was so busy being sophisticated and advanced that they'd forgotten how to think clearly. These beings had technology that could reshape matter at the molecular level, but they couldn't figure out that their prison had an echo problem. Humans, we've got this annoying habit of pointing out when the Emperor has no clothes. We ask obvious questions, expect logical answers, and get confused when simple problems have complicated solutions. In a galaxy full of beings who'd spent millennia perfecting the art of overthinking everything, this made us either extremely valuable or extremely dangerous. The Galactic Council had decided we were dangerous. They were about to find out they were right, just not in the way they thought. Apex's latest announcement confirmed my growing suspicion alert. Human Morrison has maintained silence for 47 hours. This unprecedented behavior suggests either advanced tactical planning or reality manipulation preparation. All personnel advised to maintain maximum vigilance while avoiding direct observation, as human planning capabilities may be enhanced by perceived surveillance. They were now afraid of me being quiet. Let that sink in. I'd broken them so thoroughly with one whisper that they were now terrified of me not talking. The same aliens who'd imprisoned me for talking too much were now panicking because I wasn't talking enough. Mumblex had settled into a steady purple-blue pattern that I interpreted as this is simultaneously hilarious and terrifying. Unit 447 was running diagnostic loops, trying to calculate the probability that human vocal emissions could actually alter fundamental reality. Gorvac had started a prayer circle with some of the other prisoners, though I wasn't sure if they were praying for my success or for the universe to survive whatever I was planning. The beautiful thing was, I wasn't planning anything specific. I was just waiting for the right moment to demonstrate that the galaxy's most secure prison could be defeated by the revolutionary concept of applied common sense. They'd built their whole system on the assumption that everyone would play by rules that didn't make sense. Time to show them what happened when someone didn't. Day 53 was when I decided to give the galaxy a masterclass in human problem solving. It started with breakfast. The guards delivered my meal through the usual complicated procedure involving 3 different security checks, 2 biometric scans, and 1 robot whose only job was to announce food delivery commencing in 17 languages. I waited until they were all gathered outside my cell, clicked the comm button and said, "Thanks, but I ordered the fish." They didn't serve fish. They'd never served fish. The prison commissary didn't even know what fish was. "Sir," stammered Guard Unit 78B, a nervous crystalline being whose body was practically vibrating with anxiety, "there is no fish option in your meal allocation." "Huh," I said, loud enough for the acoustic system to pick up. "That's weird. The human in cell block 7 said you guys had fish yesterday." There was no cell block 7. There was no other human. but watching them scramble to check their non-existent records was worth the 49 days of terrible prison food. Within an hour, half the guard staff was conducting a station-wide search for the mysterious second human who'd somehow been eating fish that didn't exist. The other half was trying to figure out how I'd obtained information about activities in areas I'd never been to. Apex kept announcing conflicting updates. Human prisoner total confirmed at 1. Human prisoner total requires verification. Initiating human prisoner recount. While they were busy chasing ghosts, I started Phase 2. Mumblex, I whispered to my cellmate. Flash red 3 times if you want to get out of here. Mumblex went red so fast I thought he might short-circuit. But more importantly, the guards saw it. Sir, Unit 78B reported to Klex Thor. The blob entity is responding to human acoustic commands. Impossible, Klex Thor clicked. Mumblex's species communicates through chromatic displays, not auditory processing. Nevertheless, sir, the human appears to have established command protocols. This was getting better by the minute. I leaned close to the cell barrier and whispered, Mumblex, show them the color for the warden is standing behind you. Mumblex turned a brilliant gold, which wasn't actually the color for anything, but Klex Thor spun around so fast his exoskeleton actually squeaked. The other guards followed suit, creating a beautiful moment of synchronized paranoia. Human Morrison, Klex Thor said, approaching my cell like I was radioactive. What did you? Instruct the prisoner to communicate? I asked him to show you the color for this is hilarious, I said. Turns out that's gold. Who knew? By day 54, they'd moved me to isolation, convinced that I was somehow coordinating a prison-wide rebellion through interspecies acoustic manipulation. The isolation cell was their latest mistake. It was positioned right next to the main ventilation intake, which meant anything I said would be distributed to the entire facility faster than before. I waited until the evening shift change, when the corridors were full of guards switching posts, and whispered, Phase 2 is complete. Initiate Phase 3. I had no idea what Phase 3 was supposed to be, but apparently neither did they. And that was the point. The response was immediate chaos. Guards started demanding to know what Phase 1 had been, whether Phase 3 required evacuation procedures, and why nobody had briefed them on human tactical phases. Apex began announcing phase monitoring protocols activated while simultaneously asking query, what is a phase? Unit 447's mechanical voice echoed through the vents. Logic assessment. If human tactical phases exist, and Phase 2 achieved unspecified objectives, the probability of Phase 3 success approaches certainty. Even the robot was helping now. Gorvax started telling other prisoners that human tactical phases were ancient Earth military strategies that operated on principles beyond galactic understanding. The prisoners, desperate for any hope, began treating my random comments like battle plans from a superior military mind. By day 55, the guards were so convinced I was orchestrating something that they'd practically orchestrated it themselves. They'd reorganized their entire security structure to respond to phases that didn't exist, created emergency protocols for threats they couldn't define, and turned their maximum security prison into a comedy of errors that was writing itself. Computer, I whispered to Apex during the morning shift change, begin Phase 4. Acknowledged. Apex responded immediately. Phase 4 initiated. All personnel please stand by for Phase 4 implementation. They'd programmed their own AI to take orders from me. 3 days later, I walked out of the galaxy's most secure prison through the front door. Not because I escaped, not because I was released, but because the entire facility had become so paranoid about my phases that they'd accidentally created an evacuation protocol that included prisoner relocation to secure temporary facilities. The secure temporary facility they chose? The civilian shuttle bay. The civilian shuttle bay that was, technically, outside the prison. The civilian shuttle bay where my old cargo ship was still impounded. The civilian shuttle bay where nobody had thought to post guards because, and I quote Klex Thor's final report, human phase implementation renders traditional security measures ineffective. I sent a message to Earth as soon as I cleared galactic patrol space, Jake Morrison reporting. Defeated maximum security prison using advanced human tactical doctrine, also known as pointing out the obvious. Recommend immediate diplomatic contact. These aliens need our help more than they know. 6 months later, I'm back at the same space station where this all started, but now I'm wearing a diplomatic badge instead of prison clothes. Turns out the Galactic Council was so impressed by my tactical brilliance that they offered me a position as human strategic consultant. My job description officially reads application of human cognitive frameworks to complex galactic challenges. Unofficially, they pay me to ask obvious questions about stupid policies. Klex Thor is my liaison now. He still clicks nervously whenever I talk, but he's learned to appreciate what he calls my unconventional analytical approaches. Last week I helped him figure out why their cargo scheduling system had a 6-month backlog. Turns out they'd been calculating shipping routes based on theoretical mathematics instead of actual distances. Umblex got early release and now works as a color communication specialist. Gorvak published his illegal poetry, and it became a bestseller across 12 systems. Unit 447 was promoted to head of logical analysis after suggesting that maybe AI shouldn't take orders from prisoners. The prison itself has been converted into a cross-species communication research facility, which is a fancy way of saying they're trying to figure out how human talking can apparently break reality. They still haven't figured out it was just bad acoustics. I'm technically still serving my sentence, but my new diplomatic immunity means they can't actually re-arrest me without causing an interstellar incident. The Galactic Council has decided that having humans as allies is safer than having us as enemies, especially since we apparently possess reality manipulation through applied common sense. They're not wrong about that last part. Give a human a problem that's been overcomplicated by a committee of aliens, and we'll find the simple solution that nobody else thought to try. It's not magic, it's just being too stubborn to accept that easy things should be hard. The galaxy is slowly learning that humans don't break reality, we just refuse to accept broken realities. Sometimes the most powerful weapon really is just being refreshingly, annoyingly human. And sometimes the universe just needs someone to whisper, "You're all finished," and mean it.